Lilly and Jack Sullivan have been missing for over a month. Dozens of voices have spoken out. Some confirmed, some unverified. Rumors spun into wild theories, finger-pointing, speculation, desperation. Only one side stayed silent, the police. Nearly 20 days, no updates, no statements, no presence. And then, suddenly they speak. New confirmations, new claims. But why now? To calm the public? Or because the case just turned? What are they really trying to tell us? And what are they still hiding? The confirmation from RCMP. For the timeline of the day of the disappearance, on the morning of May 2, 2025, at approximately 10 a.m., the Royal Canadian Mounted Police confirmed that they received a 911 call from Malehya, Brooks Murray, the mother of 6-year-old Lilly and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan. She told dispatchers that her children were missing from their home in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. According to her statement, she had heard the children playing earlier that morning in a nearby room. She said she fell back asleep, and when she woke up, they were gone. Also present in the house was Daniel Martel, her partner, and the children's stepfather, though it's unclear exactly when he realized the kids were missing before the call was made. RCMP officers responded quickly to the scene. Resources were deployed almost immediately, drones with thermal imaging, canine units, and aerial surveillance teams combed the surrounding forested area. By 4:55 p.m., the RCMP issued an official missing persons bulletin, but there was no Amber Alert. According to protocol, such an alert requires a confirmed abduction or a known suspect, and in this case, neither existed. Instead, a vulnerable persons alert was issued, recognizing that the children were extremely young and at risk. What makes this case especially troubling is the unaccounted time window between 6:30 a.m. and 10 a.m., a critical 3.5-hour gap that remains unexplained. Malehya's claim about hearing the kids earlier in the morning hasn't been verified by any outside witness. In fact, no one, not neighbors, not delivery drivers, not surveillance footage, can confirm seeing or hearing the children that day. There are no verified digital records, no GPS data, and no signs of forced entry or struggle in or around the home. In effect, Jack and Lilly vanished silently, without a trace, in the time between when their mother claims she last heard them and when she called 911. Several details surrounding that morning don't add up. The sliding glass door, which Daniel later said the kids usually opened themselves to play outside, was reportedly closed that day. Daniel also made contradictory statements about what Jack was wearing, first saying he was in a pull-up, then changing his story to say Jack had on a brown shirt and brown pants, adding that Lily's backpack was probably brown now, from being left outside. The repeated mention of the color brown in 3 unrelated ways caught the attention of online investigators and behavioral analysts, who noted that liars often rely on repetitive or over-explained details. This 16:30 to 10 a.m. window has become a central focus of the investigation. It's a time in which everything depends solely on the statements made by the two adults inside the home, and nothing can be independently verified. The lack of clear, corroborated information, combined with subtle contradictions, has led investigators and the public alike to question the truth about what happened to Lilly and Jack is being hidden. If there is an answer to this mystery, it likely lies in what occurred, or didn't occur, during those early morning hours before the police were ever called. For the direction of the investigation, the RCMP treated this case as a routine missing persons situation. Officers responded swiftly, believing that Jack and Lilly Sullivan had simply wandered off and could be found quickly, just like many other cases involving young children. This case started just like what you're describing. You thought you'd go there, find them very quickly. That reflected on how the case initially appeared to be straightforward. But things didn't unfold as expected. As days passed with no trace of the children, the nature of the investigation shifted. The RCMP has since acknowledged that they haven't had any confirmed sightings of Jack or Lilly. That's an alarming reality, especially in missing children cases, where some form of verified sighting usually emerges within hours or days. The complete lack of visual confirmation has pushed this case into more suspicious territory. According to RCMP policy, every missing persons case is automatically considered suspicious until proven otherwise. So every missing persons investigation is suspicious until it's proven that it's not. This fundamental approach gives investigators the scope to treat even the most seemingly benign disappearances as potential crimes until facts say otherwise. As one officer put it, "We have to continue to assume that it is suspicious and access those resources and tools until we find the people that are missing." Despite lacking any direct evidence of abduction, the RCMP has not ruled it out. They clarified that, "To be clear, we don't have evidence to suggest that an abduction took place at this time." But they immediately followed with the fact that they're exploring all investigative avenues. This includes abduction as one of the scenarios under review, alongside the possibility of a tragic accident or concealment by someone known to the family. What's especially unsettling is how RCMP officials have openly admitted they can't explain how two small children could just vanish. When asked point blank, "How do two young children just vanish?" the spokesperson responded vaguely, asking the public for tips instead of providing clarity. The evasiveness hints at the seriousness and complexity of the investigation, either because they don't know or because they can't yet disclose what they do know. When pressed whether the RCMP actually knows what happened to Jack and Lilly, they didn't say yes or no. Instead, they repeated, "We're exploring all investigative avenues." That ambiguity, paired with the absence of suspects, sightings, or hard leads, keeps the case in a state of heightened suspicion. At this point, the investigation remains legally categorized under the Missing Persons Act, not as a criminal case. However, the scale and nature of RCMP's actions, widened timelines, national tip tracing, evidence reviews, and media appeals mirror the structure of a major criminal investigation. While no criminal charges have been filed, and no suspect has been publicly named, the behavior of authorities suggests they are actively considering that a crime may have occurred. In short, although the RCMP lacks definitive proof of foul play, their strategy clearly reflects the possibility that this is more than just a disappearance. And until Jack and Lilly are found, or concrete evidence is presented, the case will remain open, unresolved, and officially suspicious. When asked whether Jack and Lilly Sullivan could still be alive, the RCMP repeatedly avoided giving a direct answer. Instead of confirming or denying it, officials emphasized that their primary goal remains to locate the children. One spokesperson responded, "That's a great question, and our goal is to investigate every single avenue until we find them." Even when pressed with, "Is it possible at this point?" the response was equally vague, refocusing on the importance of finding evidence related to their disappearance rather than addressing the question head-on. The RCMP has stated that, to date, there have been no confirmed sightings of Jack or Lilly, a fact that adds to the uncertainty and deepens public concern. Officials also acknowledged that they must be extremely careful about what information is shared, specifically noting that premature disclosures could interfere with the investigation. While there is no official confirmation of harm or death, the lack of clarity and visual confirmation fuels widespread speculation. Ultimately, the RCMP's public stance remains cautious and deliberately neutral, leaving open the hope that the children are still alive, but stopping short of offering any definitive reassurance. As of this update, the RCMP has received close to 500 tips from the public regarding the disappearance of Jack and Lilly Sullivan. These tips have varied widely in content and credibility, and investigators have been working through each of them systematically. Many of these leads have required officers to expand their efforts beyond the immediate area, stretching across different parts of the province and even to other regions of the country. Despite this, none of the leads have yet confirmed sightings or definitive breakthroughs in the case. To build a more complete timeline of the children's movements before they went missing, the RCMP has requested video surveillance and photos dating back to April 28, several days prior to the actual disappearance. While the children were officially reported missing on May 2nd, police believe key details might be uncovered from days earlier, such as who the children were in contact with or whether there were any suspicious individuals or vehicles in the area. Investigators explained that sometimes even a small detail, like a license plate caught from a different camera angle, can change the course of an investigation. One of the most important but tightly guarded facts is that Jack and Lilly were last seen alive in public on May 1st, the day before the disappearance was reported. They were reportedly with loved ones, though the RCMP has chosen not to disclose the exact location or who those individuals were. This sighting has helped establish a baseline in the timeline. But beyond that, authorities have kept those details confidential to protect the integrity of the case. While the investigation remains active, the lack of clear direction has caused mounting frustration among the public. The RCMP maintains that they are exploring all investigative avenues and are treating the case as suspicious until proven otherwise. Despite growing public concern, RCMP did not issue an Amber Alert when Jack and Lilly Sullivan were first reported missing. There have been some complaints that an Amber Alert was not issued. That acknowledged that many people questioned this decision. However, the RCMP clarified that Amber Alerts are governed by strict criteria. Specifically, we have to have a suspect or person of interest when it comes to abduction or a vehicle. In other words, before an Amber Alert can be activated, authorities must have a clear suspect, a specific vehicle description, a license plate number, or visual identifiers such as a photo of a potential abductor. As one officer explained, you want to direct the public to look for a specific vehicle, to look for that license plate, to look for that suspicious person, to have a photo of someone. In the case of Jack and Lilly, none of these requirements were met, making an Amber Alert ineligible under policy. Instead, due to the children's young age and the nature of the case, RCMP issued a vulnerable persons alert, which is typically used when missing individuals are considered to be at elevated risk due to their age or condition. As they stated, in this case, they are young children, certainly vulnerable people, and a vulnerable person alert was issued. For the outside reaction, the public response to the disappearance of Jack and Lilly Sullivan has been marked by growing frustration, suspicion, and distrust toward law enforcement. The RCMP openly acknowledged this tension, stating, "Some people are frustrated that the RCMP is not saying more." This lack of information has not only intensified public concern, but has also fueled widespread online speculation and rumors, which have negatively impacted the children's family. As RCMP noted, in some cases the lack of information leads to speculation and rumors are rampant online, and that's done some harm on the family in this case as well. In response to these concerns, RCMP explained that their silence is intentional and strategic, emphasizing, "We have to be very cautious as to what type of information we release, because we want to make sure that it doesn't affect the investigation." They warned the public not to rely on unverified content online, adding, "Don't listen to those rumors that are out there." Instead, they urge people to trust only official sources, assuring that we're putting out those news releases on a regular basis with information pertaining to the investigation. Despite these reassurances, media questions have increasingly reflected public doubt, with one reporter bluntly stating, "I read that news release and I thought, I don't think they have any idea what happened here." This sentiment reflects a broader sense of impatience and fear that the case may remain unsolved. Even as the RCMP urges the public to be patient and follow the facts and evidence, pressure continues to mount. At its most extreme, the public is now grappling with the unsettling possibility. Is it possible that we may never find out what happened to Lilly and Jack? While the RCMP has made repeated efforts to reassure the public, their official statements reveal a far more uncertain and complex reality. By confirming that no suspects have been identified, that hundreds of tips have yielded no concrete answers, and that even basic facts about the last known sightings remain undisclosed. Investigators have shown that the case is still far from any resolution. Their emphasis on caution, controlled information, and public patience does serve to protect the integrity of the investigation, but it also highlights how little is truly known. Rather than offering closure, these confirmations raise deeper questions. If there was no abduction, how do two children simply vanish without a trace? And if there was foul play, why hasn't anyone been held accountable? In the end, RCMP's stance seems less about reassuring and more about buying time to follow leads, time to sort through a maze of public pressure, and time to hopefully uncover a truth that, for now, remains buried in silence. A few days earlier, the search teams had also shared their own thoughts on the operation, on what they were doing, and why they believed the children were still somewhere out there. When asked directly, their representative said that, "Do you think those kids are in the woods?" The search team member didn't hesitate. "From everything I've seen, yes, I have not been told anything to lead me to any other conclusion at this point." That answer wasn't based on hope, it was based on process of elimination. Since the very beginning, nothing has pointed them elsewhere. The kids vanished in the dense woods near Lansdowne, and all signs, few as they may be, still point to that forest. There's been no confirmed sighting outside of the area. No vehicle. No abduction lead. Just the woods. So, why haven't they been found? The first, and most obvious reason is simple: the kids are small. They're small. They'd be hiding. They would have crawled underneath something probably when they got tired. The searcher explained. When young kids get scared or exhausted, they don't yell for help. They crawl under trees, squeeze into brush, or tuck themselves under fallen logs. In a forest this thick, that's like looking for a needle in a haystack, if the needle was trying to hide. There's also the possibility they simply wandered further than anyone expected. He said that. They could have gone further than what we searched. The search grid is based on radius, on likelihood. But two scared kids in the woods don't follow logic. A few hundred extra steps in the wrong direction can throw off everything. And, despite all that, the searchers aren't ruling anything out. There's all kinds of scenarios, unfortunately, he admitted. But still, no reason strong enough to abandon the woods as the primary focus. One piece of physical evidence has helped keep that theory alive: a boot print. Yeah, it looks like a children's rubber boot print, which is what we were looking for. It wasn't confirmed, not 100%. But it's the only potential trace found during the entire search that might belong to the kids. A small rubber boot mark in the soil. Nothing else. That single mark was enough to call in canine units, human trackers, and even forensic teams who made a cast of the print. The search strategy itself speaks volumes. This wasn't a wide, open sweep. It was a tight, controlled, high-intensity, closed-grid search. That means teams were spaced just a few feet apart, moving in a line so tight they could almost touch fingertips. Why? A lot of children that age range will hide. The searcher explained. The team needed to assume the kids didn't want to be found. They used every tool they had: scent dogs, trained to follow the freshest human trails, drones equipped with thermal imaging, and human trackers capable of spotting the tiniest signs: a broken twig, a scuffed patch of dirt, a bit of clothing snagged on bark. Every resource was deployed under the belief that Jack and Lilly were still out there. Alive, scared, hiding. And until they have a real reason to believe otherwise, that's where they'll keep looking. Beside that, they also mentioned the difficulties in the search. The forest wasn't just thick, it was overwhelming. Search teams described areas where were almost close enough to touch each other, yet couldn't see the person beside them. There would be places where teams would be almost able to touch their fingertips together, and they couldn't actually see each other through the bushes. In some sections of the woods, even standing just 20 meters apart, visibility dropped to barely 2 feet. The trees, underbrush, and twisted growth made it nearly impossible to move, let alone search thoroughly. And as if the natural terrain wasn't enough, the damage left behind by Hurricane Fiona made everything worse. When asked how much of the devastation was due to Fiona, the answer was direct. A lot of this is down because of Fiona. Entire areas were buried under layers of fallen trees, one on top of another. You can get places where it's just deadfall on top of deadfall on top of deadfall. Teams were forced to crawl under or climb over these massive piles, slowing the search to a crawl and putting themselves at risk. But it wasn't just the forest testing them. It was the emotional toll, too. For many of the searchers, this case hit too close to home. There were members that couldn't bring themselves to call the names, they just couldn't say the words. Some were so emotionally overwhelmed that they couldn't even say, Jack, or Lilly, out loud. Others simply couldn't go back. There were people, mentally exhausted, that couldn't return to the search area as well. Even trained professionals have limits when hope fades and days stretch into weeks. Then came the technical barriers. This wasn't a typical search, you needed precision. We use a lot of very specialized assets like canines that are looking for the freshest human scent they can find. But if a civilian walked through the area beforehand, they could throw the dogs off completely. One wrong track and the dog was done for the day, exhausted and missiled. Drones were another challenge. If we're flying a drone over the area and we get a heat signature, we have to send resources in to confirm who that is. Even false alarms had to be treated seriously, wasting time and manpower. And it wasn't just about finding the children. It was about reading the forest for clues. We're not just looking for the 2 children. We're looking for all the evidence, the footprints, the pieces of clothing, the broken branches. That meant examining every inch of the terrain, spotting details most would miss. Every twig, every scrap, every trail mattered. It required trained eyes, focused minds, and endless patience. All told, over 12,000 hours were poured into the search. It's pretty much unheard of in this province. The effort was massive, the commitment unmatched, but the result, still uncertain. This wasn't just a missing person case. It was a battle against the wild, against time, and against the crushing weight of not knowing. From the outside, it's easy to wonder why more people weren't allowed to help. After all, 2 children were missing. Shouldn't every set of eyes matter? But for the teams on the ground, the answer was clear: untrained help could do more harm than good. The first and most critical reason had to do with the canines. One team leader explained, "We use a lot of very specialized assets like canines that are looking for the freshest human scent they can find." These dogs aren't just sniffing randomly. They're trained to follow the most recent trail of a missing person. But if a well-meaning civilian walked through the area beforehand, they could unknowingly leave a stronger, fresher scent than the children ever did. That canine could get on the track from that person, and then we've just wasted that resource. Worse, once a dog has run a track, especially a false one, it's done for the day. They're probably exhausted and can't go out and do anything else. Then there were the drones. Equipped with thermal imaging, they scanned the forest for body heat. But if they picked up a heat signature and couldn't confirm what it was, the team had to investigate. If we're flying a drone over the area and we get a heat signature from somebody, we have to send resources in or police resources to confirm who that is. One unknown figure in the woods, just a hiker or a concerned neighbor, could trigger hours of wasted effort. Beyond the technology, there was the matter of training. It all comes down to training. Things like a child-sized footprint in soft soil, a scrap of fabric snagged on bark, a broken branch that didn't fall naturally, even a slight indentation under a bush where a child might have curled up to sleep. These weren't just searchers, they were clue finders. They're very clue sensitive. And for them, a careless step by someone outside the team could erase something irreplaceable. Because this wasn't just about finding 2 kids. It was about reading the forest like a book, page by page, sign by sign. We're not just looking for the 2 children. We're looking for all the evidence of them going through the area. That required an almost surgical level of care. If a stranger wandered into the wrong place, they could trample over the one sign that mattered. They could unknowingly destroy the only breadcrumb left. So, they kept the public out. Not out of secrecy, but out of necessity. When news broke that search teams were heading back into the woods, many people thought something had changed. Maybe they'd found new evidence. Maybe a breakthrough had come in. Maybe, finally, there was a lead, but that wasn't the case. So, just to be clear, it was not as a result of new information. It was not. No. The second search had nothing to do with fresh tips or hidden clues. It wasn't triggered by a phone call or a new sighting. It was simply the result of careful, methodical review. The decision came after multiple conversations between the lead search coordinator and the major crimes unit. They had been going over every inch of paperwork, every map, every search log. It was actually a conversation. I was meeting with major crimes on a regular basis, going through the paperwork from the search and showing them what was covered and what wasn't covered. What they found were gaps. Some areas had been missed, others needed to be searched more thoroughly. There's some areas that we would like to go in and get covered off. Either better or new areas that, they said, well, there's a possibility. So they went back out. The second effort happened the weekend after May 7th, once the initial large-scale search had been scaled back. Fewer volunteers showed up that time, but the mission was just as serious. We saw a little bit lower numbers on some of the revisit searches that we did with some of the teams for that first weekend search. The goal wasn't to chase rumors. It was to tighten the perimeter and clean up the edges. What prompted the second weekend search? Someone asked. Basically the same thing, the searcher said. Just more areas that we really wanted to see get covered and just expand out on what we had done. Still, for many in the public, it sparked hope. I think it gave some people in the public hope. Yes. Like, oh, maybe they found something there in that area they're looking for. But that hope was misplaced. The second search didn't mean they had found anything new. It just meant they refused to leave anything undone. What remained unwavering was the dedication of the volunteers. Most of these people, they're all volunteers. They just want to find the kids and bring them home. Their commitment hadn't changed. If they needed to search 10 more times, they would. They're more than willing to keep coming back and keep searching. But even the most devoted teams can't stay forever. Unfortunately, at this point, unless something comes up, we're probably not going to be back. Still, they left the door open. But that being said, somebody could find something that brings us back. So no, the second search wasn't a breakthrough. It was a reminder, even in silence, even without answers, they kept going. Because not going wasn't an option. The researchers also show their appreciation to those who were supporting them during the search. Most of the people out there in the woods weren't professionals. They weren't paid. They weren't obligated. And they didn't do it for recognition. They were volunteers, neighbors, parents, strangers, who showed up simply because 2 children were missing, and they couldn't live with doing nothing. Their goal was never complicated. They just wanted to bring the kids home. That was it. No reward, no glory. Just the quiet hope that they might be the ones to call out a name and hear a response. The chance to end a nightmare for a family they'd never met. Even as the days stretched on and the hope got thinner, they kept coming back. Many had jobs, families, and responsibilities of their own, but still, they returned to the forest. Again and again. Driven by something deeper than duty. A sense that if they didn't try, who would? But the toll it took was real. Some searchers became so emotionally overwhelmed, they couldn't even bring themselves to call out the children's names. Jack and Lilly. The words got stuck in their throats. Saying them out loud made it too real, too heartbreaking. Others reached a breaking point of another kind. After days of trudging through thick brush and deadfall, after hours of silence and no answers, they simply couldn't go on. Mentally drained, physically broken. Some never returned. The man leading the search admitted it. Every case is hard, but some hit closer to home. This one did. Maybe it was the age of the kids. Maybe it was how long they'd been missing. Maybe it was the silence. Whatever it was, it left a mark on everyone involved. And yet, even through that pain, there was something else. Something powerful. Because when children go missing, people show up. Good people. People who might otherwise pass each other on the street without a word. In times like this, they drop everything. They organize. They walk into miles of unknown terrain with blistered feet and tired eyes, and they keep going. Because children have a way of pulling the very best out of us. In the end, it wasn't just a search. It was a reflection of love, humanity, and the relentless instinct to protect the most vulnerable among us, even when the odds are against us. At this point, the investigation surrounding the disappearance of Jack and Lilly Sullivan has splintered into two dominant theories. On one hand, the official stance maintained by police to this day suggests the children may still be somewhere in the forest, lost, possibly hiding, or tragically unable to return. It's a direction rooted in terrain searches, scent trails, and behavioral patterns of missing children. But on the other hand, an entirely different theory has gained traction. One not led by law enforcement, but by voices from within, those who know the family. According to this theory, it wasn't a disappearance at all. It was a deliberate escape. A carefully orchestrated exit, led by their mother, Malehya Brooks Murray, possibly to avoid intervention from Child Protective Services. So the question becomes, which path does the evidence point toward? Which theory holds more weight in light of the facts, inconsistencies, and behaviors now in the open? And more critically, if the children are still alive, which theory offers them the best chance at survival? Are the children in the woods? From the very beginning, the RCMP has maintained a consistent position that Jack and Lilly Sullivan left their home on the morning of May 2nd by themselves. There has been no clear sign of foul play, no indication of abduction, no evidence of violence, and no involvement of another adult. Because of this, authorities did not issue an Amber Alert, citing a lack of criteria that would suggest the children were taken against their will. The theory that's been publicly promoted by RCMP is that the children exited the home through the sliding back door, something they reportedly did often. From there, it's believed they wandered into the surrounding forest, likely became disoriented, and possibly encountered an accident that left them unable to return. Authorities have not ruled out the tragic possibility that the children may have died from exposure or injury. In terms of public messaging and search coordination, the RCMP has been careful not to cast suspicion on any family members. All official updates released through press conferences, social media, and news interviews have remained focused on the surrounding wilderness near their residence. The investigation, at least publicly, has centered on the theory that the children are lost somewhere in the dense terrain behind the home. The search operation has been expansive. Multiple units of the RCMP local, provincial, and those specializing in missing children have been mobilized. Local search and rescue teams were also deployed, along with hundreds of volunteers from the community. This has become one of the largest ground searches in recent Nova Scotia history. A wide range of tools and technology have been employed: thermal imaging drones, helicopters, scent tracking dogs, dive teams exploring local water sources and culverts, and ground-penetrating radar for difficult terrain. The effort has covered rivers, woods, fields, and underground infrastructure. The physical area of focus has remained the same: Lansdowne Station, especially the vicinity around Gairloch Road. Over 8.5 square kilometers have been searched to date. Special attention has been given to the drainage pipes and utility corridors that run near the property, where signs of movement had been reported. Supporting the main investigation, digital analysis has also played a role. RCMP confirmed that they've examined the family's home Wi-Fi router logs to identify any unusual online activity. They've also seized and reviewed the parents' digital devices, phones, computers, for clues. In addition, They've requested surveillance data and GPS logs from delivery services, such as Amazon, FedEx, and Canada Post, in hopes that dash cam footage or route information might reveal something the human eye missed. Together, these efforts reflect the strongest, coordinated response to a missing children case the region has seen in years. But they also reflect just how committed police remain to the belief that Jack and Lilly may still be out there, somewhere in the woods. One of the earliest supporting points for the "lost in the woods" theory comes from the timeline on the morning of May 2nd. According to their mother, Malehya, she heard Jack and Lilly playing in the next room early in the morning. She reportedly fell back asleep, and when she woke up around 10:00 a.m., the children were gone. She immediately called 911 to report them missing. Another key detail comes from the layout of the home. Daniel, the children's stepfather, stated that the sliding back door was often used by the kids to go outside on their own. There were no signs of forced entry, struggle, or any disturbance in the house. This detail aligns with the possibility that the children exited the home voluntarily. A child-sized footprint was found near a drainage area not far from the family's residence. While it hasn't been officially confirmed to belong to Jack or Lilly, its size and location support the idea that one or both children may have wandered into the woods and gotten lost. Additionally, search teams discovered a child's water bottle and several clothing items in the general search zone. Although investigators couldn't definitively link these items to the missing children, they did not rule out the possibility that the items belonged to Jack or Lilly. This added to the urgency to continue search operations in the area. Importantly, RCMP officials have consistently stated that no evidence of foul play has been found. There were no signs of abduction, no indications of violence, and no reports of unfamiliar individuals or suspicious vehicles near the home at the time the children disappeared. The absence of external threats lends weight to the theory that this was an accidental disappearance. Environmental conditions also played a critical role. At the time, the area experienced cold and humid weather, conditions that can be especially dangerous for unsupervised young children. The terrain around Lansdowne Station is densely wooded, with thick brush, deep ditches, and uneven ground, all of which make search and rescue efforts more complex. From a behavioral standpoint, experienced searchers have pointed out that children as young as Jack and Lilly often act in ways that make them hard to locate. It's not uncommon for young kids to hide when scared, or to keep moving away from their starting point, unknowingly increasing the search radius. In several past cases, children were found hiding very close to their last known location, sometimes just out of sight. Finally, early search efforts did yield limited signals. FLIR thermal drones, cadaver dogs, and dive teams picked up faint heat traces and scent responses in certain areas. While none of these signals led to concrete discoveries, they were taken seriously and contributed to the decision to continue focusing on the surrounding forest. On the surface, nearly everything the RCMP has communicated publicly reinforces the theory that Jack and Lilly Sullivan wandered away from home and became lost in the surrounding wilderness. Official statements have repeatedly emphasized that there is no evidence of foul play. Authorities have avoided implicating any family members and continue to frame the search as a missing persons case, not a criminal investigation. Their messaging, across press briefings and social media updates, consistently highlights efforts to calm the nearby forested areas. This public narrative is further supported by the massive physical search efforts that were launched in the early days of the case. The RCMP mobilized personnel at the local and provincial levels, including specialized child search teams. Local SAR units and hundreds of volunteers joined in. The search area extended over 8.5 square kilometers, with particular focus around Gairloch Road and storm drainage systems, where signs had previously been reported. In terms of tools and strategy, everything pointed to a theory of environmental exposure. The deployment of FLIR thermal drones, tracking dogs, helicopters, dive teams, and ground-penetrating radar all align with a search designed for children lost outdoors, seeking heat signatures, scent trails, and hidden hazards like culverts and ponds. But beyond these visible efforts, certain investigative actions suggest the RCMP is not entirely committed to a single narrative. Behind the scenes, police have seized and analyzed the digital devices of both parents, phones, tablets, and computers. These devices were scanned for GPS data, communication logs, and location tracking, which could potentially contradict the wandered away timeline. Investigators also examined the home's Wi-Fi router to review data logs, which could indicate any unusual network activity or device access that morning. They didn't stop there. RCMP requested and reviewed third-party delivery records from Amazon, FedEx, and Canada Post, likely searching for unexpected visitors, dashcam footage, or unaccounted movements near the property. In addition, Daniel Martel, the children's stepfather, underwent a polygraph test, a move that's often reserved for cases where internal foul play hasn't been ruled out. While he reportedly passed the test and offered to take it voluntarily, the very decision to administer it suggests that police were open to other possibilities, even if they weren't made public. If the theory that Jack and Lilly Sullivan truly wandered into the forest is correct, then we're looking at one of two possible outcomes. One faintly hopeful, the other tragically probable. There's still a remote chance that the children are alive. They may be hidden somewhere deep in the woods, disoriented or injured, possibly unable to find their way back. It's conceivable that a drone, a search party, or even a passerby might come across a clue that was missed during initial sweeps. Perhaps the kids are hiding, afraid, or simply trapped in a part of the terrain that's difficult to access. That hope still exists, but the reality is grim. In most recorded cases across North America, children aged 4 to 6 rarely survive beyond 72 hours alone in the wild without food, water, or shelter. It has now been more than 40 days. At this stage, survival would be a miracle. Possible, but extremely unlikely. The more realistic outcome is that Jack and Lilly perished early on. Exposure to cold, dehydration, accidental injury, or wild animals could have claimed their lives within the first few days. Their bodies might now be hidden beneath dense vegetation or disturbed by wildlife, making them nearly impossible to find. This would explain why even with thermal drones, scent tracking dogs, and dive teams, search crews have found nothing conclusive. If this turns out to be true, the implications are heavy. Investigators would need to reevaluate their initial strategy. Why weren't the children found despite one of the largest search operations in Nova Scotia's recent history? Did search teams overlook something early on? Could critical areas have been missed or delayed in the search timeline? For the family, such an outcome may clear them of criminal suspicion, but not necessarily of public judgment. Questions will linger about how the children were able to leave the house unnoticed, and whether adult supervision failed in a way that allowed this to happen. Depending on findings, the family could face criticism, or even legal consequences related to negligence. Publicly, the case could spark renewed debate over the way missing child cases are handled. Some will ask whether an Amber Alert should have been issued sooner. Others may challenge the assumptions that shaped the initial search areas. If this ends without a rescue, many people may feel that something could have been done differently. The loss could erode public confidence in how such emergencies are managed. There may also be long-term changes in policy. The controversy surrounding the absence of an Amber Alert, due to a lack of evidence of abduction, may prompt a reevaluation of the criteria used in similar future cases. Perhaps authorities will become more flexible when dealing with missing children where circumstances are unclear. Subtle signals were already present. After the second week of intensive searching, the RCMP scaled back their operations, shifting from broad field efforts to more focused, technical investigation. While the public message remained steady, the operational shift suggested they were preparing for a tragic resolution. Adding to the unease were inconsistencies in the parents' accounts. Conflicting statements about when the kids were last seen, whether the back door was locked, and what the children were wearing. These don't necessarily imply foul play, but they do raise questions about lapses in awareness or communication, which may have contributed to the tragedy. If this theory is confirmed, it won't bring relief, only sorrow. It will mean that two children disappeared just steps from home, and despite all efforts, help never reached them in time. Is Malehya running with her children? This theory does not see the disappearance of Jack and Lilly Sullivan as a tragic accident or a case of children getting lost in the woods. Instead, it suggests something far more deliberate. According to this perspective, the children's mother, Malehya Brooks Murray, orchestrated the entire situation, carefully planning their disappearance in order to remove all three of her children, including the youngest, Meadow, from the reach of authorities. The suspected action involves staging a false scene at their home to make it appear as though the children simply vanished. Under the cover of this deception, it's believed Malehya quietly removed the children from the property and possibly the region, either acting alone or with the help of someone close to her. The primary motivation behind this alleged act is to avoid intervention by Child Protective Services. Malehya had reportedly been under scrutiny and may have feared losing custody. By disappearing with the children, she could maintain control and prevent any legal effort to separate her from them. Whether this plan was executed entirely on her own or with assistance remains uncertain. Some believe this may have been a solo decision driven by desperation, while others suspect that her family, especially her mother, may had an active role in helping carry out and conceal the plan. In contrast to the lost in the woods theory, which emerged immediately and shaped the initial search efforts, this alternative theory didn't surface right away. Instead, it gradually took shape through personal testimonies and insider accounts from people closely connected to Malehya and Daniel. The first public claims suggesting that Malehya Brooks Murray had taken her children and gone into hiding came from Darren Geddes, also known informally in the community as Darewood. Darren Geddes lives in Trenton, Nova Scotia, just a short distance from where the children were last seen. More than just a neighbor, he is a second cousin of Malehya, the children's mother. His family connection has been confirmed by Belinda Gray, the maternal grandmother of Jack and Lilly Sullivan. He is not a stranger to the region or its people. With over 30 years working in the local mining industry, Darren is deeply familiar with the culture, the families, and the relationships that shape the community. His own son previously worked alongside Daniel Martel, the children's stepfather, which adds another layer to Darren's understanding of the household dynamic. Darren was the first person to publicly state that he believed Malehya had fled with the children. He did not speculate idly. Instead, he based his claims on information from what he described as a highly credible, well-connected source. Darren called this source ironclad and claimed the individual knew the entire story from front to back. When asked to identify the source, Darren declined. He wouldn't give the name unless this information turns out to be wrong. Still, he maintained full confidence in what he had been told, adding that he had corroborated it with other people. Darren's most powerful assertion was this: Jack and Lilly are alive. 1000% sure. According to him, the children were placed in a vehicle, transported by someone known to Malehya, and are now being protected, possibly by indigenous communities. He suspects the children may no longer be in Nova Scotia, and possibly not even in Canada. He believes that a small group of young women, friends of Malehya's, and connected distantly through indigenous heritage or family ties, were involved in helping her flee. He describes them as young, emotional, and impulsive, possibly acting out of a misguided desire to rescue Malehya from a situation they believed was harmful. Darren has emphasized that if Malehya had come to him, or a responsible adult, she could have left legally, with protection, and without placing her children at risk. Instead, he says, she acted out of fear, confusion, and psychological strain. He suggested that Malehya may suffer from postpartum depression or PTSD, conditions that could have worsened due to trauma in her personal life. According to Darren, She was not a malicious person, but rather someone easily overwhelmed. Someone not equipped to handle confrontation or sustained emotional pressure. One of the most critical developments Darren pointed to was that Malehya left her mother's home with her youngest child, Meadow, after realizing Darren was getting close to the truth. This was a serious violation of CPS regulations, which had only granted Malehya custodial rights to Meadow on the condition that she remained at her mother's residence under supervision. Her departure triggered an immediate loss of custody and likely heightened law enforcement scrutiny. According to Darren, the final destination may have been the Shubenacadie First Nation, where Malehya hoped to seek legal protection. Notably, her attorney is believed to be the brother of the tribal chief of that area, giving weight to the theory that she aimed to leverage indigenous legal structures for safety or immunity. Perhaps Darren's most consequential statement was this: he believes he knows who was driving the vehicle that picked up the children. Though he has not publicly named that person, he has said he is almost certain about the identity. During a critical livestream, Daniel Martel gave a detailed and emotionally intense account of what he believes happened with Malehya Brooks Murray, the mother of the missing siblings, Jack and Lilly Sullivan. His narrative, while not confirmed by authorities, positioned Malehya as someone who'd deliberately gone into hiding and possibly endangered her children in the process. Daniel claimed that Malehya fled her mother's house with their youngest daughter, Meadow. This, he said, was a direct violation of the custody terms set by Child Protective Services, which only allowed her to keep Meadow under 24/7 supervised care at her mother's home. By leaving, she not only broke the terms but also put Meadow at risk of being permanently taken by the system. She broke CPS protocols and now Meadow is at risk of being taken. She is supposed to have 24/7 supervise. He also stated that Malehya was terrified of the RCMP, the federal police in Canada, and believed they were getting closer to uncovering the truth. According to Daniel, she completely cut off communication with him, hanging up the phone as soon as she heard his voice. To him, this wasn't just fear. It was guilt or, at the very least, a sign that she was hiding something. Another key detail Daniel pointed out was what Malehya chose to take with her when she fled. She left behind almost all her belongings, but brought very specific items: her children's birth certificates, their school photos, and 2 stuffed animals belonging to Jack and Lilly. Daniel believed these weren't accidental choices. To him, it suggested she may have had a plan to take all 3 kids with her eventually, maybe to cross the border. Daniel also discussed what he believed to be Malehya's fragile mental state. He shared that she had threatened suicide in the past if CPS ever took Meadow away. He recounted that during one interaction with police, Malehya told the RCMP that she felt safest when she was with him. However, after a private conversation in an ambulance with her own mother, everything changed. Malehya shut him out completely and never spoke to him again. Daniel believes that conversation was the turning point, one that convinced her to run and cut all ties. He offered a chilling explanation for her behavior. She couldn't stay around me because she would crack. I would find out. According to him, she couldn't handle being near him because he would have eventually uncovered the truth, whatever that truth may be. In Daniel's view, Malehya wasn't acting randomly. She was being driven by fear, desperation, and possibly external pressure. He presented himself as someone who had cared for the children, someone who knew her well, and someone who'd have exposed whatever secret she was keeping. Whether Daniel's version of events is accurate or not, his livestream added another layer of complexity to an already chaotic case. It painted Malehya not just as a grieving mother, but as a potentially unstable and fleeing figure in a story that still has no clear ending. As speculation continues, so do the questions, and the children remain missing. With this direction, in the best-case scenario, all 3 children, Jack, Lilly, and Meadow, are alive. They might be with their mother, hidden away somewhere far from the eyes of law enforcement or Child Protective Services. Maybe she believes she's protecting them. Maybe she's convinced that this is the only way to keep her family together. If the children are found soon, and if proper care is given, there's still a chance they can return to a safe, stable environment. With the right therapy, with the right people around them, they could slowly recover from the emotional damage. If they're being fed, sheltered, and physically unharmed, then this could still be a story with a peaceful ending. But the darker scenario is harder to face. If this escape drags on too long, the risks grow exponentially. The kids might not be getting any medical attention. They're likely not in school. They're living in hiding, cut off from friends, from structure, from normalcy. Worse, if their mother is unstable, stressed, or paranoid, those kids might be growing up in fear, or worse, under warped ideas of what's happening to them. If they've crossed a border or fled to another country, things get even more complicated. No legal documents, no recognized identity, no access to basic health care or protection. That's how kids vanish for years. That's how they fall through the cracks, into systems that don't know they exist, or into the hands of people who want to keep it that way. And if authorities discover the truth too late, the consequences could be devastating. Malehya could face serious criminal charges, kidnapping, obstruction of justice, custodial interference. And the children, especially Jack and Lilly, might then face the trauma of being ripped away from the only parent they've seen for weeks, maybe months. They'd be placed in protective custody, under psychiatric care, in a system they never asked to be part of. No matter how this ends, one thing is clear. If this theory is true, the kids are still alive. But what kind of life they're living, and what kind of life they'll have when this is over, that all depends on how much longer this stays hidden, and how far one mother is willing to go to keep it that way. As the search for Jack and Lilly Sullivan stretches into weeks, and as theories continue to multiply online, there's one crucial lesson this case keeps reminding us. Truth cannot be assumed, it must be confirmed. In moments of fear, heartbreak, and public outcry, it's easy for speculation to take on a life of its own. But when it comes to missing children, the cost of misinformation isn't just confusion, it can be dangerous. It can delay action, destroy investigators, destroy reputations, and, worst of all, divert attention away from the very people who need it most, the children. This case has stirred intense emotions from every direction. Some believe the children are still somewhere in the woods. Others insist they were taken intentionally. We've seen live streams, YouTube breakdowns, first-hand testimonies, and even uninvited appearances from people claiming to be involved. But at the heart of all these conversations, there's a hard reality we must hold on to. Only verified evidence, confirmed by official investigators, can move this case forward in any meaningful way. Rumors, no matter how detailed, passionate, or convincing, are still just that, rumors. The RCMP and associated search and forensic teams are trained, equipped, and legally authorized to handle these kinds of investigations. While community input and public engagement can be powerful tools, they can't replace the integrity and accountability of a formal investigation. Every video, every screenshot, every anonymous source needs to be handled with extreme caution and humility. Because if we're wrong, we're not just misinformed, we're part of the problem. We also need to acknowledge the emotional weight this situation carries for everyone involved. That includes Daniel Martel, Malehya Brooks Murray, extended family, neighbors, and community members. No matter what role anyone may or may not have played in the disappearance, no one, especially not the public, has the full picture. And until we do, we owe it to everyone, especially the children, to speak with care. That means avoiding accusatory language, resisting the urge to villainize without proof, and always remembering that grima and desperation don't look the same on every face. Some of the most vocal voices in this case may very well be telling the truth. Others may be misled, afraid, or simply overwhelmed. But at the end of the day, our personal theories aren't what matter most. What matters is whether Jack and Lilly are safe. What matters is that we don't turn this into a spectacle that forgets why we're watching in the first place. We live in a time where public opinion can move faster than police reports. But speed doesn't equal accuracy. And popularity doesn't equal truth. As this case unfolds, let us be the kind of public that demands answers, not assumptions. Let's ask better questions, yes. But let's also know when to pause, when to listen, and when to admit we simply don't know enough. And most of all, let's remember what truly matters: 2 missing children. 2 small lives whose well-being is not a mystery to solve or a story to dissect. It's a responsibility. Whether they are in danger, in hiding, or in someone's care, the mission has not changed: bring them home. Safe. Alive. Without noise. Without blame. Without distraction. Because if we forget that, then we haven't just lost track of Jack and Lilly, we've lost something much bigger.